And then control of and critical orientation too, reflecting debates around, I'll talk about a little later about are we just turning children into robotic reproducers of hegemonic culture. But our argument was that, to be critical about something, you have to be able to control it. Okay, those two things go together. Then there has been some misunderstanding I've noticed around the world about joint construction. It doesn't mean writing groups with peers. Okay? It's a severe misunderstanding and promoted by the constructivists in many sites. So this needs to maintain the asymmetry of a mentoring dyad. Okay? So the teacher is guiding in this stage. It's not students writing together and pooling ignorance. Okay? It's a mentoring relationship. The students are going to write together. This is the place for them to write together at that stage of pedagogy. Not here. This is the guidance through interaction stage. Okay, so this is just showing the different teaching learning cycles. This one has the negotiating field as a wedge, but I think it makes more sense at each stage of the pedagogy. There's some other materials, more influenced by Brian Gray. Here it's done in steps, but building knowledge of the field is across all the steps of the pedagogy. So I'm just doing it in steps rather than cycle. Cycle generally preferred because of the possibility of different exit points, entry points, but the general notion that we're moving in this kind of pattern. Okay, so I'm going to go a little deeper now and think about Bernstein's work a little more, because he has built a sociological model of different kinds of pedagogy in relation to his general sociological theory and the struggle by middle-class people essentially over schooling. This relates to his notions of a visible and an invisible pedagogy. You can think of traditional progressive, if you like, traditional, visible, clear examination processes, you know what you're going to be tested on. Progressive, maybe even an argument for no assessment. Everybody passes, you get a pat on the head, whatever you do, in the extreme. We have to make choices about the kind of pedagogy we choose. So here's how Bernstein thinks about it. I'll read this a couple of times in different ways, and I'll use some diagrams of David Rose's, which I think help to make it clear. I find reading sociology quite a struggle for me as a linguist, even though I've been doing it for decades now. But here's Bernstein writing. His horizontal dimension, I'll show you in a second, would indicate whether the theory articulated a pedagogic practice emphasizing a logic of acquisition, progressivism, or a logic of transmission, tradition. In the case of a logic of acquisition, the acquirer is active in regulating an implicit, facilitating practice. I mean, you're still going to be evaluated, but it's hidden from you what the nature of that evaluation is. In the case of a logic of transmission, the emphasis is upon explicit, effective ordering of the discourse to be acquired by the transmitter. When we began, this is the kind of thing that bothered us, especially for migrant and indigenous Australians. We felt the traditional pedagogy had offered them some opportunities to move forward, and the progressive pedagogy was a complete disaster. Same thing has happened in South Africa after liberation. The vertical dimension would indicate whether the theory of instruction privileged relations internal to the individual, where the focus would be intra-individual, so cognitive, psychological, personal growth, or relations between social groups, intergroup. You're trying to change the nature of society, the social mobility of that child in the society. In the first case, the theory would be concerned to explain the conditions for changes within the individual. So you'd look to Chomsky, Piaget. Yeah? Whereas the second theory would be concerned to explain the conditions for changes in the relation between social groups. So you're going to look to Freire, Marx. Here's a couple of diagrams. Here's the acquisition transmission intra-individual, inter-group. Same there. Just a few little comments. It's a matter of interest that this top right-hand quadrant here, the traditional visible pedagogy, is regarded as conservative, but has often produced very innovative and radical acquirers from across quite a wide social spectrum. The bottom right-hand quadrant shows a radical realization of an apparently conservative pedagogic practice. And this was us, actually, but Bernstein didn't know about us. He knew about the Neo-Vygotskians. Talking about here. And then importantly, each theory will carry its own conditions of contestation, resistance, and subversion. Here's a David Rose version of that, annotated in various ways. So I've added some little glosses here: liberal, conservative, radical, subversive. Here are the invisible pedagogies, visible pedagogies. And we're trying to think, what are the informing theories? Of course, in education, you're selectively taking from different theories into education. Who do you select from to inform what you're doing? Is it Chomsky's theory of language learning, Rousseau's ideas about education, Piaget? Are those your mentors, or are you reading Vygotsky and Halliday and Painter and drawing on their completely different view of what teaching, learning is about? Same thing again now. Focus of change. Trying to change the individual or change the world? Pedagogy, transmission focused. We're socializing you into the culture, or acquisition. You're discovering, learning, feeling your way. David Rose's ideas about the emergence of these theories, the traditional pedagogies, grammar and composition, phonics, basal readers, the 50s. Behaviorist theories backing them up. Still a prominent voice in Australia. Progressivist theories, Rousseau, Piaget, Chomsky, Goodman. Process writing, the Goodmans, Ronald Graves, whole language, these kind of things. 60s. 70s, the critical theories, Freire, essentially the guru for Giroux, Illich, a little bit of Bourdieu, if you know the French masters. And 80s. Maybe coming a little more into prominence, the Neo-Vygotskian and Hallidayan work.